What is up, guys? This is Stephanie Susskind, and welcome to the first episode of Cultiveu. So I want to start off by saying that name is a word I created. It is a play on cultivate and you. It sounds a little bit French, but it's actually not a word. So I wanted to start the show to cultivate myself. I felt this really strong desire to start using my voice and talking about my story. I thought that it would heal me. And if you listen to it and you're going through any of the things that we talk about, it might heal you too. So essentially, I'm cultivating me, we're cultivating you, so cultivate you. I want to start this show with the first episode being a solo episode about what I have been through. And it's been really challenging to do this. I've been avoiding it. It's been in the works for several years. But it's really hard to talk about yourself, especially when you got difficult stuff to talk about. But the overarching goal with having this conversation is to lay it all out there, to let you understand who I am, to understand what I've been through, and how I've overcome it, and where I'm trying to go with this show and why I'm showing up here. And I think that it'll really help you figure out whether or not you want to listen to the show, because I think this is going to be for a very specific audience, and I really only want people here that resonate. So if you can get through listening to these stories about me in this solo episode that I will never be doing again, you're probably meant to be here. So let's get this started. Okay, guys, so I'm a little bit comfy today. I recognize that one of the things that I do to avoid doing things I don't want to do is I plan on hair and makeup, and I figure if I can't do hair and makeup, then I can't do what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm here, showing up, no hair and makeup, wearing a comfy jacket, I've got comfy pants on. Let's get it done. There are no excuses here. No more avoidance. So I'm launching this on my actual birthday. I am recording this the week of my birthday, and I thought that would be such a great way to give myself a gift. The gift of committing to actually doing what I know that I want to do. Let's talk about my upbringing. So I grew up in a middle-class family. I had everything that I needed, but there was a lack of nurturing. My mother and I did not have a great relationship. I was a total daddy's girl. And as I grew up and became a teenager, it became more evident that the relationship with my mother was going to play a pivotal role in my issues. So my mother, just to give some background on who she is and what she is, and one of my most asked questions is what my nationality is, so I want to dive into that and unpack it. So my mother, without telling her story, because I really feel like it is not my job or business to be telling someone else's story, even if it's a family member. But who she was in my world is this. So my mother was born in the 1960s in Europe. And during that time, the nuns were responsible for children who were born out of wedlock, identified as the Magdalene Laundries. So if you've never heard of it, you should totally look it up. It's pretty insane. There were hundreds and thousands of children who were adopted during this time. And there were a lot of sketchy things that went on, and no one really knows how the women were treated when they were in these facilities. But I do know that my mother has a lot of trauma from that time. So with that being said, we don't actually know where she was really born or what her nationality is. We do know she was adopted by an Irish family. Even though she was adopted by a wonderful family, I cannot vouch for how she was raised. I know that, Europeans are a colder type. I'm not going to say whether I think it was good or bad, but she carried trauma from being adopted, and I believe, difficulty in abandonment and, the lack of self-love. So that obviously then stemmed into her relationship with me. So I was never taught how to love myself. And, I don't think that that's something you're really taught, other than it's a feeling, right? So if you have a parent who struggles with issues related to their own self-worth, it's hard for you as a child then to develop self-worth, right? You're just this loving, happy ball of energy, which is exactly what I was when I was a child. And it was hard for us to really create this connection of like love and unity and support, which really started to play out when I was a teenager. So when I was a teenager, I started looking to my mother for guidance on, how to do my hair, how to do my makeup, how to dress, how to be a woman. And she was completely uninterested. So I was, really devoted to like Teenage Vogue and like 16 magazine. And I was finding myself through those pieces of content back then, how to do my hair and makeup. And it was a challenge, because when you don't have someone guiding you as a woman, you have to figure it out on your own, or you are not really given that skill until later in life. Fast forward to teenage years, knowing this underlying issue with my mother, I think I had developed this people pleasing tendency, which obviously I did not know I was doing until maybe very recently. I was always the friend who would give like the shirt off my back to my girlfriends, or to friends who I wasn't even really close with, and it was probably unwarranted, but I was a giver. I didn't know how to receive, I knew how to give. And I'm grateful for that, because I'm still that way to this day. And it means that, even if it is a coping mechanism to some degree, it was that my heart was always full. Even if I had lack, I still wanted to give. So when I was a teenager, I started dating a neighbor. He was similar age to me, but he a little bit older, and he was a drug dealer. I mean, listen, we're talking about like marijuana, but there was a state of mind that he was a drug dealer, right? And he was not a great person, and there was abuse involved in that. And I mean, look, I was a kid, so having faced, people's demons at that early of an age was really scary, but I persevered and I made it through that. I ran away from home a couple of times. We had some domestic violence incidences. At one point, things were so bad in my family. I remember I got into a fight with my father, and he flipped my mattress over, and I went through the closet doors, and I got up in a rage and I punched him in the face, and he called the cops on me and pressed charges. And I actually was detained in the detention center for 7 days, and my parents left me there to kind of teach me who was boss. And when I came home, they had like stripped my bedroom down and removed all of my sheets and all of my clothing. And I was given an electronic monitor on my ankle for the remainder of the sentencing, which was 21 days. And again, I'm in high school at this point. So it was a real challenge. And obviously I didn't want to go to school. Like, I had been an honor roll student up until that point. I didn't want to go to school with an electronic monitor. So the family dynamics caused chaos, and my parents' way of dealing with it was never looking at themselves. It was always seeking outward. It was either blaming me or looking to the law for assistance. And so that was a turning point for me. I think that was when I knew that I wasn't safe. I knew that I needed to get out of there. And it just so happens that a few months later, I was in a really bad car accident just after my 18th birthday. And I was hit by several cars, and I got a large settlement that allowed me to move out of my parents' house. So at that time, there was no real future thinking. My parents weren't planning for me and where I was going to go to college, and I wasn't really guided in that direction, nor did I really know what I was going to do. So having had that happen gave me the opportunity to restart, and I got this chance to become a different person. So I, had all this money now. I didn't really know what to do with it. I was 18 years old. No one ever taught me how to write a check. I had never tried to learn myself. So I abused that money for a while, buying all kinds of things that I had never had before. And eventually I found myself in college, and I took the LSAT and I got my degree. And just before applying to law school, I took a job at a law firm as an intern, and I did that for a little while. And during that time, it was a crazy time in the world, and it was the 2008 to 2010 foreclosure crisis, so the housing crisis. And the only law firms that you could get a job at were these foreclosure mills. And so I just so happened to be working at one that was kind of a big deal in Florida. It had gotten shut down for robo signing, and they were, being surveilled by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And I happened to make friendly with one of the people at Fannie Mae, and I guess she recommended me to another law firm, and they offered me a job. And I was about to start, the law school thing, and since they reached out to me and thought that I could help them develop relationships, and that I knew someone from Fannie Mae, and I was this young girl, 20, almost 20 years old, I took the job. I decided it was a great opportunity, and maybe I had started creating relationships there. Let's see how it goes. So I ended up climbing the corporate ladder in that industry for a decade, and it was a great experience. I learned a lot of skills. It was trading portfolios between banks and hedge funds, and it was a time where banks were liquidating properties that they owned and they had foreclosed on. And it was really a sad, scary time, but it was very busy on the banking end of things. And eventually I left because I was miserable. I hated it. But here's the thing. So I had gone from, this difficult family upbringing to this newfound life, right? This new start. And it took me a while to get to this point, but once I was about 22 years old, I was in corporate. I was full-time traveling. I was going to New York every week. I was in Texas every week. Every other week, I was also going to California a lot. So I'm this young girl who came from this difficult upbringing, who then is now in corporate America, having to, put on this brave face and be this independent, smart young woman and push all of that other stuff down and kind of develop this boss girl energy where my confidence was unshakable. And I was always dealing with men. It was a male dominated industry. So it was a challenge, but the biggest challenge was really that I didn't have any female mentorship once again. And, carrying that mother wound with me made it even harder. Right? So I hadn't resolved that mother wound, and I kept attracting towards me this negativity with women, and I was this people pleaser towards them. I was always like super nice in ways I probably shouldn't have been, and I gave respect where it wasn't due or earned. But I had a lot of challenges with the women in the workplace not being supportive or like a network. So there was no one looking out for me during that time when I was traveling, and it was really scary. I was faced with a lot of difficult situations where, there was a lot of drinking and event networking happening, and I was required to be at those things. And as a 22-year-old girl, you're one of the youngest people on the scene, and you're also the most vulnerable because you're naive and you don't know, what's what. But I made it out unscathed. I was somehow born with this incredibility to know what was right and wrong. And I carry that with me to this day, and I'm really proud that I'm that way. All of these things so far up until this point, I'm 27 years old now, let's say, and I'm leaving corporate America finally because I'm just so miserable. I can't do it anymore. But I've had my blinders on this entire time. I have been in survival mode, just going. And I had the career, which became my identity, and I had no family, and I had no real personal life. And I finally started having an interest in wanting to have something that was more. I met my now husband, and he really sparked this thing in me that made me see myself as someone who was wounded. So when you meet someone and they want to offer you love and you don't really know how to receive that on a real level, it is a very big challenge, and it kind of triggers something inside of you that you didn't even know existed. So I kind of started this journey of healing myself, and I wasn't even aware of it. I had to relearn how to balance my masculine and feminine energies, and kind of not want to compete and offer the same thing that my husband offered. And he's a busy entrepreneur, and he's always on the go. And I didn't have to be that person who also worked and slaved away every day, that I could be a different kind of support and I could offer a different kind of work. And I finally got to a point where we were husband and wife, and I was in a good place, and I wanted to give back to the world, and I wanted to support maybe something with women who had been where I had been and didn't have the support just like me. And so we started a nonprofit, and I went out into the world and tried to get involved in the charity circuit. And it was incredibly toxic. Every event was a new outfit. Everything was about who has the better this, who has the better that. There was a lot of chaos. Now, there's a lot of different places in life that can bring you to competitive places like that. Of course, it's not just a charity circuit, but this is where I found this lesson. And it was my final straw. I had developed a shopping addiction. I've always loved clothes, but this was another level. And I spent about $500,000 in a year. It was causing chaos in my personal life because it was erratic and ridiculous, and it was also unfulfilling. I was still broken, and I had all these wounds that I hadn't addressed, and I was trying to mask those things with shopping. And so I finally snapped out of it. I had been betrayed by people I thought were my friends in that group, and I realized that I had never valued myself. And it was the beginning of my self-discovery. I went inward. I cut off everyone who was in my life at that time. I had to cut ties with family relationships that were toxic, which also was hard, but it was necessary. And I started going to therapy. I started seeking outwardly ways to heal myself, figure out what was wrong with me. Was I cursed? What was the problem here? Why couldn't I figure this out? I did hypnosis. I found a shaman. And then I finally tried microdosing psilocybin, and it was a game changer. I went on a journey of journaling when I did the microdosing, and I did really teeny tiny amounts, and I would sit there and I would draw or I would journal whatever came up. And as I progressed in that, because I would do it in like circuits, I would do like a 30-day period, and then I would stop, and then I would do it again for a 30-day period, and then I would stop. And every time I got more and more in tune with the reality of things, and it was just really the reality that I had never had the opportunity to experience life in a way that wasn't sad, that wasn't hurtful. I hadn't really been able to express myself in a way of just natural behavior. I was always on guard. And so I came to this place where I realized that I didn't need any of the therapies. I didn't need any of the therapists. I just needed me, my paper and pen to journal, and I needed self-love. And I needed to start expressing who I truly was without all of the masks that I had created, and just strip myself down and be who I really am. It was unconscious. And it took me until my 36th birthday to realize that I was completely present now, and that I was fully aware, and I was fully in tune with my environment and what my body was telling me. And then I needed to go down the path of sharing what I know and what I've experienced. And I think my intuition is something that I've always had on my side. It may have been what's helped me survive, but I never realized what a tool it was. And so now that my intuition is heightened in the way that it is, I feel like the world needs more conversations like this. The world needs to heal together. And I think that we need to have platforms where women can go and realize that life is pain and suffering most of the time, but here's how you deal with it. Here's how you get through it. This podcast is my way of sharing the things I have overcome with you, but it's also that I want to share the nuggets of wisdom that I have learned from overcoming these things. I learned a lot of lessons from the age of 15 to 37.
The nuggets.
My lucky break was also the biggest challenge that I've ever faced. At 18 years old, I got into a car accident. I was hit by multiple cars, and I received a $500,000 settlement, and was able to escape my family dynamics. And I moved out. I got my own place. I started going to college, but I also had a really hard time understanding how to handle all this money. So when I had received the settlement of $500,000, I had never had money like that before in my life. And my parents wanted a lot of that money because they felt that they were entitled to it. And I had so many friends around me because everyone wants to hang out with you when you have money. And none of them were real friends, right? So I had to learn those valuable lessons too, really, really early on. And listen, the value of learning that people prioritize money over anything is huge, right? So I seek out now people who value things aside from things. And I can't resonate with superficial people. I can't resonate with people who only prioritize the materialistic. And although I love, a lot of materialistic things, it doesn't define me and it doesn't make me who I am as a person. And people who identify with what they have are not my people. That was the beginning of my poor relationship with money because I didn't value it. I learned that people valued money more than they valued relationships, and so money became the enemy to me. And that was a problem because when you have a poor relationship with money, it ruins everything for you. Money is definitely a spiritual thing, and I know that people think that that's ridiculous, but it's a lot more spiritual than we would like to admit. If you don't think you're worth the money, if you don't think that you're worth being able to create and cultivate money, then you won't ever have it. You will just get rid of it or you will never earn it. So I learned that lesson. So the mother thing to me has shown me that people are just people, okay? When you become a parent, it doesn't automatically make you some sort of perfect human, that you will know how to raise a child. But what I also understand is that you really can't give love to anyone if you don't know how to love yourself. So if my mother didn't know how to love herself, how on earth could I have expected her to love me in the way that I needed? It's just not possible. So the cycle continues. If she wasn't loved or she felt unloved and then she couldn't love herself, she couldn't love me. And then if I continued that pattern, I wouldn't be able to love my child, and so on. But I'm breaking that cycle. So there's a lot to unpack with that relationship. But it also showed me that I sought out mentorship from women, especially women who were older than me, and I never got it. Because what I didn't understand was that I didn't need it. Because I had already figured out how to nurture myself. I just wasn't giving myself what I needed. Wasn't allowing that inner mentor had to develop at an early age unleash. I didn't believe in my own internal mentor until I was forced to. Now, I think the other thing is that I also learned how much we mirror and how much we attract when we're in these places. So since I had never given myself any of the credit for all this stuff, I brought it closer to me and closer to me and closer to me until I was finally ready to just look it right in the eyeball and say like, oh, okay, I get it. I see you. I'm waving the right flag. I see your pain. I understand. Hard, but if we're willing to see, we don't have to go to that extreme or to the extremes that I've been through. After leaving corporate, it was really only the beginning of my transformation because this now is the first time that I had the opportunity to face myself and realize that I had been running from myself for over a decade. I had to confront that I didn't know how to receive love. So that was the beginning of the real work on me. It began with relationships, and then it turned into the fact that I didn't have any self-love and that I was a people pleaser. And then my transformation to want to really honor my intuition led me here. To this conversation, to wanting to talk, to use my voice, to share this awful story with you, which is, my God, who wants to listen to this, right? Because that's how I feel. Why would anyone want to listen to me talk about all of the crap that I have been through in my life? Because we all have a story. We all have stuff that we've been through. But I think I have been put into a box, and I have put myself into a box of being something that I'm not. And that's a societal issue, but it's also my own fault because I allowed myself to want to be just this person who is on the surface, always put together, always done up, always happy, always has the newest stuff. But inside, I was in so much pain for so long, and I never had an outlet for that pain. And it's like, I actually believe, because I know that I would want to have this in-depth conversation with someone else and hear about them, that there are people out there that want to listen to this. And I hope that it's because you're not happy that I've been through pain, and that it's this could be inspiring for something you might be dealing with, and that you're not alone in whatever suffering you're going through right now. That is the point of this episode, and for you to get to know who I really am and what I've overcome. Because now I would like to get into the fact that all of these things were the biggest blessings that anyone can ask for. So the first half of my life, before I turned 40, I'm not 40 yet, I'm 38 as of this week, these lessons shaped who I am. So I learned the really hard stuff in the beginning of my life. I didn't really get to have that much fun, even though I was out there living and experiencing and doing things. But I didn't get to have like that joy and that creation and that playtime with my internal higher self. So now that I have all of those lessons under my belt, I'm going to take the opportunity to apply all of that as my wisdom. When I was going through a lot of this stuff, I could not find anyone on the internet that I felt was actually authentic enough to be giving me this kind of a sit down. And so this is here for you. It's also here for me. It's healing for me to talk about this. And I hope that if you're ever going through something, you know that you can turn this on and you can listen to it. That's what we're going to do here. This podcast is not about sympathy. It's about possibility. Despite everything, I did not get bitter. I got better. And so can you. Okay, guys, that was really heavy. Hard to do, hard to unpack. But I'm glad it's done. I hope that this sheds some light on who I am and what I'm all about, what I've overcome, and what I'm here to do. Ready for the next episode where I have my astrologer on. We're gonna dive into what I have found in astrology and how it's really shaped how I look at things now. I can't wait to go on this journey with you.